Here on BBC One, Steven Spielberg's Band of Brothers continues after the news.
There are almost 500,000 children locked up around the world. Witness their story through their eyes. Kids Behind Bars, Monday at 10:35 on BBC One.
This is BBC One in London and the South East. Now the news at 10 o'clock with Peter Sissons and Nina Hussain.
Bush warns the most difficult part is yet to come in Afghanistan. He prepares America for a long campaign dismantling the terrorist network. Defiance from the Taliban, but they say they've lost touch with bin Laden. Scotland Yard charged 2 men tonight over recent bomb attacks. 7 years jail for Jonathan King for sex offences against schoolboys.
On BBC London News, Stephen Norris sacked from Mayor Ken Livingstone's transport team, and rush hour tube cancellations are at a 5-year high.
Good evening. President Bush has reaffirmed America's objectives in Afghanistan and braced the military for a long struggle against the terrorists hiding there. He said American forces had made a good start, but it was now going to get more difficult, hunting down and destroying the al-Qaeda network piece by piece. The president's speech to an audience in Kentucky of thousands of elite troops led to speculation that America's ground forces in Afghanistan will soon be heavily reinforced.
President Bush travelled to the base of the 101st Airborne Division to deliver what amounted to a progress report on the war. Support for the military campaign in America is unwavering, and the president was in uncompromising mood. He told 10,000 troops that a good start had been made.
We're fighting them, and one by one, we're bringing them to justice.
But the president wanted to dampen expectations that military action would soon be over.
The most difficult steps in this mission still lie ahead. Our enemies hide in sophisticated cave complexes, located in some of the most mountainous and rugged territory. These hideouts are heavily fortified and defended by fanatics who will fight to the death.
The president predicted that success in the future would come more slowly. He also hinted again that America's military action would not stop with Afghanistan.
If you feed a terrorist or fund a terrorist, you're a terrorist, and you will be held accountable by the United States and our friends.
Also with the troops today, the Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld. He said publicly what many officials are saying privately when he was asked whether he cared whether Osama bin Laden was captured dead or alive.
Well, I don't know if it's politically correct to say you'd prefer the former, but I guess I'd prefer the former myself.
Amidst all the tough talk, one major immediate question remains unresolved: whether an international peacekeeping force should be sent to Afghanistan to provide security. Gavin Hewitt, BBC News, Washington.
And Gavin Hewitt joins us now from Washington. Gavin, how come that Bush can contemplate putting extra troops in to hunt bin Laden when the Northern Alliance balks at 100 British troops doing humanitarian work?
Well, Peter, the answer is that the Northern Alliance are quite happy to see another 1,000 troops on the ground going after their old enemy, the Taliban or Osama bin Laden. They're far less convinced of the need to have international troops policing cities they now control. And there isn't any great urgency about the issue here. Donald Rumsfeld today was saying that many of those liberated cities like Mazar-Sharif and Kabul were now quite peaceful. So there is a difference of emphasis.
And do you get the impression from today that there will be extra American troops on the ground soon?
Well, I think extra American troops are being sent to the region. There are 1,500 Marines being sent there. There are 3 more gunships being sent. Whether they'll be deployed on the ground immediately, I think what America prefers is to send them in for quick missions, but not to have them on the ground permanently.
Gavin Hewitt, thank you. In Afghanistan, the Taliban say they'll fight to the death to defend the southern provinces they've been left with after a series of stunning defeats. A spokesman for their leader, Mullah Omar, also insisted that the Taliban were no longer in contact with Osama bin Laden. The Taliban's latest statement on the conflict was given at a news conference in Spin Boldak in Taliban-controlled Kandahar province. Matt Fry reports with his movements heavily restricted by the Taliban.
Penned into our compound, we remain a captive novelty here. The locals gather at first light to gawp. But today the security was stepped up. Taliban soldiers patrolled the walls and tried to beat back the audience, unsuccessfully. The reason was this: the first major press conference of the war in Taliban territory. They're getting media savvy here, although a bit late in the day. Mullah Omar, the camera-shy leader, had sent his protege, a 25-year-old former Islamic student who learnt his English as a refugee in Pakistan. He was uncompromising and articulate.
This is something that the world or the great powers are trying to divide Afghanistan to north, east and west. But we satisfy our people that we will try our best and defend the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan and will defend the freedom of Afghanistan, and we will not allow any power or any force to divide our nation or to divide our country to different divisions.
Another first.
So does that mean that you are ready to negotiate for the end of
Women
the
at the
war?
press conference. The Taliban is now desperate to get its message across. As for Osama bin Laden, he told us that he didn't have a clue where he was, but that he remained a friend.
He was somebody who was giving and ready to give even his blood for the sake of this nation during the Russian interference. So what will be friendship more than that?
While he spoke, some were already preparing for prayer. The Taliban's stand is defiant, but in the light of its recent losses, not necessarily plausible. The locals are amazed by what's going on here. A press conference in front of television cameras given by Mullah Omar's personal spokesman in English. The message is clear: the Taliban are not giving up. Matt Fry, BBC News, inside Taliban-controlled Afghanistan.
The first United Nations aid flight to Afghanistan since September the 11th has arrived in the capital, Kabul. Supplies are being handed out to residents of the city made homeless by the fighting. Our special correspondent Ben Brown reports from the city on how the people of Kabul are now being cared for. You might find some of the pictures disturbing.
Relief supplies being distributed at last to the people of Kabul. Blankets, clothes and food. They wait their turn patiently, like prisoners longing to be released from their hunger. Women form a separate queue from the men. Notice how they still wear their burqas. The Taliban may have gone, but for the time being at least, most women here are still nervous about showing their faces. There isn't much food on offer for now, just a sweaterful each. But it's a start. And there are tents for those made homeless by the recent American bombing.
We are giving them very basic emergency relief items, food and warm clothes and blankets to survive literally in the next few weeks.
But no one is helping the children at Dar al-Itam orphanage. The aid agencies that used to look after them left Kabul when this crisis began 2 months ago. Their parents were killed in the long years of civil war. They told me that now they have no food and not enough clothes, blankets or heaters to fight off the cold.
They were helping us before, but now all of them have gone. We have no bread or rice. Winter is coming, and we don't have stoves, wood, or fuel.
But it seems that here there's always someone who's even worse off. These boys were playing when an anti-tank missile detonated accidentally. They're recovering well now, but it shows that even when the fighting is finished, there are still casualties. The litter of war, mines and unexploded bombs are scattered across Afghanistan. This is a land where the infrastructure had already been destroyed by civil war. American bombing has smashed it even further. The international community are discussing proposals to rebuild this country. Afghans won't be holding their breath.
The United Nations are drawing up a plan for the reconstruction of Afghanistan, but it will be a monumental task that will cost billions and billions of dollars and take years and years. It will also require a lasting commitment and generosity from the international community, long after the television cameras have gone.
Children scavenge amid the wreckage of a bombed-out factory for anything of value. They're part of a generation which was born into war. Unless there is peace and sustained international aid, it's hard to see their lives getting much better. Ben Brown, BBC News, Kabul.
In Connecticut, an elderly woman has become the fifth person in the United States to die from inhalation anthrax. The authorities are completely mystified as to how Ottilie Lundgren, who was 94, could have contracted the disease. She lived alone in a rural part of Connecticut and left home only rarely. In the last half hour, 2 men have been charged in connection with recent bomb attacks in London and Birmingham. They were detained in raids last week. Scotland Yard said tonight that another man remains in custody. Our crime correspondent Stephen Cape is in the newsroom. Stephen, what more can you tell us about these charges?
Well, there's absolutely no doubt at all that the anti-terrorist branch were taking it right up to the wire because they'd have had to have either released or charged these people by tomorrow morning in most cases. Well, one man has been charged with causing the BBC bomb here in West London and also a bomb in at Ealing in West London. Another man has been charged with causing the Birmingham bomb. He's also been charged with possession of explosives. He's also been charged with further firearms offences. Now, as you said, one man remains in custody and he'll continue to be questioned. But 3 others who were arrested a few days ago have in fact been bailed on fraud charges and fraud charges and forgery and while inquiries continue. And what I can say also is that one man has been released without charge.
Okay, thank you. Excuse me. The European Commission has imposed record fines totalling £500 million on some of the world's leading manufacturers of vitamins, in what the Commission said was the worst case of price fixing it had ever investigated. 8 drugs companies were involved, and the range of products affected, as well as vitamin pills, included the vitamin content of cereals, drinks, cosmetics and pet food.
They're an essential part of healthy living, but the price of vitamins produced by some of the world's most powerful companies was rigged. The record fines imposed today on those firms reflects the seriousness of the offence.
This is, in fact, the most damaging series of cartels the Commission has ever investigated, due to the sheer range of vitamins covered, which are found in a multitude of products from cereals, biscuits and drinks to animal feed, pharmaceuticals and cosmetics.
The 8 firms involved in the cartel arrangements acted as if they were one organisation. They fixed prices, they imposed sales quotas, they agreed when prices were to rise, and they held regular meetings. The prime mover was the Swiss firm Roche, which controls half of the world vitamin market. It's considering appealing against its fine. Supermarkets, which have seen the prices of a whole range of products affected, said today's news was good for consumers.
It's going to save them. It's going to save them money. It's going to make things more open. You know, consumers don't like being deceived, and that's what's been happening here.
Just how much the supermarkets, the food manufacturers and consumers have been overcharged for the vitamins in all kinds of products is impossible to calculate. But the European Commission points out that in the 3 years after the price-fixing arrangement for vitamin C ended, the producers' revenues more than halved. The Commission's crackdown follows even tougher penalties imposed by American regulators.
It brings Europe much closer to the very tough American approach that we've seen over recent years, and as a signal from Mario Monti, the commissioner in charge, that he intends to go down that American path of very tough enforcement.
Today's fines may have broken records, but for Roche, the cost amounts to no more than a tenth of its annual profits. Rory Catherine-Jones, BBC News.
Senior football officials have criticised the Professional Footballers Association for calling a strike in its dispute over the share of television money it receives. The union has instructed its members to boycott all matches where television cameras are present from December the 1st.
No club can match Manchester United for glamour, for commercial appeal or for income. A players' strike would hit them and their huge following very hard.
I think it's out of order. I think the players should contribute more than the £70 a year to do at the moment. I think it's out of order. The fans have paid season tickets, can't go to the games. They're strong.
I'm all in favour of it. I think they're doing the right thing. The majority of the players back them and it's an official strike, so I think everybody else should back them in football.
The league say they've offered the Players' Union far more money than it's ever seen before, £50 million over 3 years. Their generosity, like their patience, is exhausted, and they say they'll take legal action if they have to.
It's almost unthinkable that a game takes place, the stadium is full, the players are there, the cameras are there. In the dressing room, two managers, two highly skilled managers are saying to their players, go out and play, and the players are sitting there, on the bench. It's just absolutely unthinkable that we should get to that.
Because if they do, then the real paymasters, the TV companies themselves, will be out for blood. Their multi-billion-pound investment in the sport is not showing quite the returns they'd intended. Major sponsors would also seek compensation, all of which puts greater pressure on the clubs, and many of them are already deep in debt. But that has not stopped the Players' Union pursuing what they believe is rightfully theirs, a 5% share of the camera money for clubs just as much as for players.
When they're in trouble, they turn to us, and that's why I feel there's clubs in the Premiership, Fulham, Middlesbrough, Derby, Charlton, who when they had real problems didn't even have a ground hardly. The receiver was called in. We get involved in trying to keep the club alive, and it's sad that some people have short memories because ours is still quite long.
But that still hasn't convinced the leagues that the PFA really needs £27 million a year. This is where the strike is due to start. It can still be averted one way or another, though it's probably too late to dispel the sense of overriding greed within the game, at the very point at which the commercial interest in it seems to have peaked. David Eads, BBC News at Old Trafford.
Jonathan King, the former pop singer and broadcaster, has been jailed for 7 years for sexually abusing young boys. King, who is 56, was found guilty in September of carrying out a series of assaults against teenagers during the 1980s.
Once he arrived at leading London venues in his Rolls-Royce. Today, Jonathan King came to the Old Bailey in a prison van. Sentencing him to 7 years in jail, Mr. Justice Paget told him, "You used your fame and success to attract impressionable adolescent boys. You then abused their trust." King was arrested after police received a complaint following the conviction of another man. More allegations followed. King's offences took place in the 1980s. Others dating further back were left on file, and he was acquitted in one case.
He put these victims through a very harrowing time in court. They were accused of fantasising and distorting the truth. King also gave evidence and mocked them.
On his official website, Jonathan King, with characteristic arrogance, continues to criticise the legal system. This pre-recorded statement was put out after he was sentenced.
It is just grossly unfair. The reason being that you can't prove you didn't do something 18, 25, 32 years ago.
Jonathan King's barrister said he'd suffered a spectacular fall from grace. He said his work had been his life, and he'd lived all his adult life in the spotlight.
Entertainment USA.
In the 1980s, Jonathan King graduated from pop singer and producer to TV presenter. Using his celebrity, he befriends starstruck boys of 14 and 15 and abuse them. Underneath his showbiz persona, Jonathan King was a predatory paedophile. At his home, police found several hundred photos of young boys. King would cruise around London looking for boys. He knew they'd be flattered by the attentions of a famous person who drove a Rolls-Royce. Using this questionnaire, he claimed he wanted to hear their views on issues like drugs and sex. He'd call this devious strategy market research, and it would often take place at his London home. The abuse would then follow. Many of his victims have been left with psychological problems. Tonight, as he left the Old Bailey, police said there was no evidence he was part of a paedophile ring. King will be placed indefinitely on the sex offenders register and is banned from working with children when he's freed. His lawyers say there'll be an appeal. June Kelly, BBC News.
The government has made a concession in its plans to detain suspected foreign terrorists without trial. The Home Secretary, David Blunkett, told MPs that a new clause will be added, setting a time limit of 5 years, after which the measure will lapse. Then Parliament would have to vote to reapprove it. The move was welcomed by some Labour backbenchers. London's Mayor Ken Livingstone has sacked Steve Norris from the board overseeing transport policy in the city. Mr Norris, who stood against Mr Livingstone in the mayoral elections, was dismissed after criticising plans for a congestion charge on motorists in the city centre. In just 40 days' time, the most visible symbol of European unity yet devised will become a daily reality for millions. The euro will replace the currencies of most European Union countries, although not Britain, Denmark or Sweden. And it will mean consigning the franc, the Deutschmark, the lira and a host of others to history. By the 1st of January, 14.5 billion euro banknotes with a value of nearly £400 billion need to be distributed to 300 million people in 12 countries. From Finland in the far north to Greece in the south, the euro will be the only currency. Elsewhere in Europe, including here in the UK, countries will still use their own currencies, but euros will be accepted by some shops and businesses. In the first of 3 reports on the countdown to the euro, Jenny Scott has been looking at how euro coins and notes will reach people's pockets.
In 40 days' time, shoppers in this Amsterdam market will be using a brand new currency. The Dutch have the most ambitious changeover programme in Europe. By the end of January, guilders will no longer be accepted here. They'll still be exchangeable in banks, but people will need euros to survive. And here they are, stacked up in a vast warehouse just north of Amsterdam. There's £450 million worth of euro coins in these boxes waiting to be distributed, and that's just for the Netherlands. 11 other countries across Europe are facing the same awesome task. There are enough euro coins in this set of boxes alone to pay off the average British mortgage twice over. By January the 1st, they, plus the 2.5 billion other coins in this warehouse, will be in the Netherlands' bars, shops and restaurants, forming part of the world's newest and one of its largest currencies. And this is how they'll get there. Hundreds of armoured Brinks trucks, almost double the usual fleet, are transporting euro notes and coins around the Netherlands. It's a dangerous business.
We had an attack and the criminals were shooting with Kalashnikovs on the window and on the vehicle.
Never before in Europe has so much money been moved around the continent amid so much publicity.
We are very worried that there will be a severe attack somewhere in Euroland. And the professional crime will go for the high volumes and not the coins but the banknote.
If there is a successful attack on these vans, it opens up a whole new danger, counterfeiting. Euros will be unfamiliar. It won't be easy to recognise the genuine from the fake. Intelligence services are already on the trail of counterfeiters.
Some criminal groups, very professional groups, counterfeiting nowadays Italian lira or Deutsche Mark, are getting some interest to try to counterfeit euro currency too. And some of these groups are under surveillance for the moment.
In fact, security is so tight, the Dutch will only see their new banknotes for the first time when they go to a cash machine on January the 1st. The system will be under huge pressure, but at the central bank, the director in charge of the changeover is confident it'll cope.
We have worked for quite a long time together with all the parties that will have to play an important role in this transition. And I know that we have built this scenario on a consensus, and I know that no one wants to be the weakest link.
No country will want to be either. 11 other nations will be hoping for a smooth transition to the single currency. It's taken years of arguments and planning for the euro to get this far, and still there's one last obstacle before it comes into everyday use. It's got to be delivered across 12 countries in a matter of weeks. It's a huge task, and if anything goes wrong, it could undermine confidence in the whole currency. Jenny Scott, BBC News in Amsterdam.
And our second Euro report will look at how the new currency will work on the high street. In tonight's Champions League game, Arsenal continued their dismal run of away form in Europe with a 2-0 defeat to the Spanish side Deportivo La Coruña. Arsene Wenger's side has now lost all its away games in this season's competition.
Anxious faces, and no wonder. After an away record of play 3, lost 3 in phase 1, Arsenal could have done without a trip to Spain's league leaders. And the panicky nature of their defending, which allowed Roy Mackay to shoot Deportivo into an early lead, merely emphasised their lack of confidence overseas. It rapidly got worse. Diego Tristan is one of Europe's most accomplished forwards, but this seemed just too easy. The body language of Thierry Henry said it all. And the half-time replacement of goalkeeper Richard Wright was a possible indication of where manager Arsene Wenger was placing the blame. But Arsenal did improve, and Patrick Vieira was inches away from making it a contest. But that was as good as it got. They simply can't win away in Europe, and a place in the last 8 looks a distant prospect already. Nigel Adderley, BBC News.
It's 25.5 minutes past 10. I'll be back a little later with an update on the day's headlines, but now we join our news teams across the United Kingdom.
Good evening from BBC London News. Ken Livingstone has sacked Stephen Norris, his Conservative rival for the job of Mayor of London, from the body in charge of public transport in the capital. The dismissal comes after Mr Norris spoke out publicly against Mr Livingstone's plans for a £5 congestion charge on motorists to drive into the centre of London. Tonight, Mr Norris was unrepentant.
Ken Livingstone's battle with the government over the tube entered a critical phase today when MPs began an inquiry which could benefit the mayor. But a grilling of London Underground bosses in the Commons has been overshadowed tonight by the mayor's surprise announcement that he's sacked his Tory opponent for mayor, Steve Norris, from the Board of Transport for London. The mayor says he's fired Mr Norris, who's already declared he wants to run against Mr Livingstone for mayor again in 2004, because of his gratuitous attacks on TfL policy. Furthermore, says Mr Livingstone, Mr Norris has accumulated a number of paid transport-related consultancies that have made his position on the board increasingly untenable. Mr Norris, who was tonight pursuing his business interests in the City of London, isn't going to lose any sleep over his dismissal.
When I joined the Board of Transport for London, I made it clear that I wasn't there as a poodle, I would speak my mind. Ken obviously feels that's a rather uncomfortable position to be in. We're probably better off with me outside Transport for London because it will give me the opportunity perhaps to say more openly how badly I think Ken is actually managing London.
The mayor's trade union allies, also being quizzed by MPs tonight, insist Mr Norris had to go.
The fact is, I mean, Steve Norris has been one of the people that has been supporting the privatisation of the mainline railways. So whether that's got a part to play, I don't know. But I mean, really, that's a matter for Ken Livingstone to give his reasons why he's dismissed Steve Norris.
The Tories claim the sacking proves Mr Livingstone can't take criticism. So a day of bitter political argument over the tube has ended with the mayor, Ken Livingstone, sacking his biggest critic on public transport, Steve Norris. John Craig, BBC London News, Westminster.
Well, today it was also revealed that cancellations on the tube during rush hour are at their worst for 5 years. Overall, 3 million of us use the tube each day. 5 years ago, 4.2% of peak time trains on all 12 lines were cancelled. But in March this year, that figure was 5.6%. The worst lines to travel on are the Circle and Bakerloo lines. But this evening, bosses said there'd been a radical improvement in the past 6 months.
We've been able, working with the staff, to improve attendance. And in many of the lines, the asset performance is improving. With the result, the service there has improved. I admit that is not across all the lines, but in many of them it is better.
London's biggest restaurant, Sugar Reef in Piccadilly, could lose its right to open late at weekends as part of Westminster Council's plans to force earlier closing times in the West End. The 1,000-seater restaurant and nightclub is facing court action.
Filmed by a Westminster councillor, just some of the behaviour the local authority want to wipe out. 1,000 The West End has become the scene of a thriving late-night scene. It's estimated at weekends 128,000 people need to get home after a night out in the area. Many of them have been drinking. Residents and the police have had enough and have laid the blame on an incompatible cocktail of residential and commercial interests. Over the past 10 years, there's been a 35% increase in bars and pubs in the West End. The number of people living in the area has also gone up, but the number of shops and offices has gone down. It's this shift that the council believes has led to 41% of Westminster Police's command budget being spent trying to control West End crime. A living, mixed community is council speak for what it's trying to promote, but businesses feel they're being penalised for providing a successful service for hard-working young people. Sarah Harris, BBC London News.
A part-time Radio 1 DJ has died in hospital after being shot in North London. Scotland Yard believes Horace Pinnock, known as DJ Village, was murdered after an argument with a group of men yesterday morning in Wembley. It's believed he'd earlier been the victim of a street robbery. 4 men have appeared before magistrates charged with smuggling half a tonne of cocaine with an estimated street value of £30 million. Last month, Customs and Excise arrested 6 men after 6 suitcases of the Class A drug were dumped out of a plane at Southend Airport. The plane had flown from Jamaica, tracked by Customs officers. 45-year-old David Ogundipe from Lagos in Nigeria was bailed to appear before magistrates next month. 3 other men were remanded into custody. Now, you may be forgiven for thinking that Nicole Kidman had put her film career on hold in favour of music, with her Robbie Williams duet getting maximum airplay. But she remains high profile on the big screen, following up the success of The Others with the British romantic comedy Birthday Girl. It premiered tonight at the London Film Festival. Amanda Hussain was there.
You trawl through strange websites researching your Russian internet bride.
I did actually. I did a lot of research into it because I really wanted to understand the character and where she comes from, and I got obsessed with the Russian.
Yeah, I think she did a lot more
Just
research
saying,
than I did.
Chill out.
No, it was.
I mean, I speak for a third of the film in Russian, so.
Go on, give us a snippet, give us a line.
You got to see the film.
Football now, and as you may have heard, a bad start for Arsenal as they began the second phase of the Champions League tonight in Spain. It ended Deportivo La Coruña 2, Arsenal 0. Meanwhile, back on these shores in the First Division, Crystal Palace travelled to Gillingham but failed to deliver, missing out on a back-to-the-top-of-the-table win. Final score there, Gillingham 3, Crystal Palace 0. And in Division 2, a busy first half at Loftus Road for QPR, winning 4-0 against Swindon. That's it for now. Our next update is in breakfast. Now it's back to Peter Sissons.
And the main news again, President Bush has warned America that the hardest part of the mission in Afghanistan is still to come. He told troops in Kentucky there was still much to be done, but America would achieve its aims. And tonight, anti-terrorist police have charged 2 men in connection with recent bomb attacks in London and Birmingham. Newsnight is starting now over on BBC Two, but from the 10 o'clock news, good night.
Good evening to you. After the rain we've seen today, it's a good news story for tomorrow because it will be basically dry but colder. So a brief cold, dry spell, then more rain and wind arriving as we move into the weekend and becoming mild again as temperatures rise over the next 2 or 3 days. Now you can see from the blanket of cloud that's covering a good part of the United Kingdom, we don't have too many temperature problems in the south, but clearing skies in the north and strong winds from the northwest are bringing very much colder air. The winds are quite strong, especially around the Northern Isles. You can see the change in the colours of those areas as that colder air sinks southwards. So overnight tonight, the temperatures in Scotland, for instance, could lower to as low as -2, and also a few wintry showers, especially from Aberdeen northwards and across the Northern Isles. A light dusting of snow is possible for some of those showers. Now we're likely to keep a lot of cloud in the south, so a completely different story, quite a contrast for southern parts of Britain. All this cloud that's been sinking its way southwards. The rain much more patchy now, but still a lot of cloud and still some spots of rain throughout the night for southern counties, but temperatures holding up very well here, 10 or 11 degrees. The contrast is between the two, where we find clearing skies towards the end of the night, allowing a touch of frost here and there. 3, for instance, in Northern Ireland and 3 or 4 in the far north of England. But tomorrow's forecast is much better, a lot more in the way of sunshine. We still find some patchy rain in the south, and we hold on to a fair amount of cloud until lunchtime before it all disappears out of the way. And we find sunny spells for most of us and just a few wintry showers, especially in the far northeast of Scotland. Temperature-wise, well, feeling cooler generally, 8 or 9 in the south, but no higher than around 4 or 5 degrees in the north of Scotland. Feeling much colder because of the strength of the wind. And then tomorrow night, quite a widespread frost. Friday's forecast brings milder air back in from the west. After an early frost, we'll find generally things clouding over with outbreaks of rain for all of us by the end of the day. And then into the weekend, well, we keep an area of high pressure to the south of us, but that's where it'll stay. No real sign of any settled conditions. And these weather fronts will arrive, bringing further wet weather, especially through Sunday and into Monday. The whole system moving through quite swiftly, but we will find strong winds and temperatures on the rise, as I say, moving back into the milder air through Sunday and into Monday. Well, a summary of all that then, let's have a look at what's going to happen for the next 24 hours. Basically a dry story and cold tomorrow as well. An early frost on Friday and then turning milder as the rain starts to arrive from the west, and some of that rain could turn out to be quite heavy. Breezy, mild and wetter times as we move into the weekend. So the best day of the week, likely tomorrow, with more in the way of sunshine, but wrap up warm. Bye for now.